Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was forced to become a pro too early. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The ceiling was white. Not the soft, comforting cream of a home, nor the bright, promising fluorescent of a classroom. It was the sterile, oppressive white of a place where people came to be fixed, or to die. Izuku Midoriya blinked, the action feeling like grinding sandpaper against his corneas. The rhythm of the room was dictated by the mechanical beep-hiss-beep of the monitor to his left. It was a metronome counting down the seconds of a life he wasn't sure he still owned. He tried to move his right arm and was immediately punished. A jolt of lightning-hot agony shot from his fingertips to his shoulder, so violent that his vision blurred into static. He gasped, the sound dry and ragged in his throat, and fell back against the pillows. "Don't," a voice croaked from the shadows near the window. "Just, don't move, my boy." Izuku turned his head, the simple motion making his neck scream in protest. Sitting in a folding chair that looked dangerously fragile beneath him was a skeletal figure. Toshinori Yagi, All Might, but not the Golden Age hero who laughed in the face of danger. This was the man behind the curtain, slouched over, his oversized yellow suit hanging off his emaciated frame like a shroud. "All Might?" Izuku whispered. His voice sounded wrecked. "I'm here," Toshinori said, but the catchphrase held no weight. It was just a statement of location. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles were white. "Recovery girl did what she could. Your legs are fractured. Your right arm." Izuku, it was shattered. The backlash from One for All, combined with the impact against that thing, the Nomu. The memory crashed into Izuku like a freight train. The USJ. The dome of glass and steel. The villains pouring out of the purple mist like a plague. Aizawa-sensei, battered and bloody, his head smashed into the concrete. Azuri and Mineta cowering in the water. And the creature, the bioengineered nightmare that had absorbed 100% of a smash without flinching. "Everyone?" Izuku asked, the panic rising in his chest, triggering the heart monitor to beat faster. "The class? Aizawa-sensei? 13? Alive," Toshinori said quickly, raising a hand to calm him. "Aizawa faces a long recovery. 13 as well. But no students died. Because you bought us time." Izuku exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. They were alive. He hadn't failed. Not completely. But then he looked at Toshinori's face. The hero's eyes were sunken, deep dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. There was a thin line of dried blood at the corner of his mouth that he hadn't bothered to wipe away. "But you," Izuku said softly. "You used up your time." Toshinori flinched. He looked away, staring out the window where the twilight of Muzurifu was painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. "I went beyond my limit. Way beyond. When I fought the Nomu, I could feel the embers flickering out. I didn't just shorten my lifespan as a hero, young Midoriya. I fear I may have extinguished it." The silence that followed was heavier than the collapse of the USJ dome. "I have perhaps minutes left per day," Toshinori confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "Maybe an hour if I do nothing but sit still. The symbol of peace is effectively a ghost." Izuku felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. Guilt, hot and acidic, welled up in his stomach. "It's my fault. If I had been stronger, if I hadn't jumped in, you wouldn't have had to. If you hadn't jumped in, I would be dead." Toshinori cut him off, turning back with a fierce, burning intensity in his skeletal blue eyes. "Do not apologize for saving my life. Do not apologize for being a hero." He reached out, placing a large, bony hand over Izuku's uninjured left one. "However," Toshinori said, his tone shifting from paternal to grave, "the world does not know this yet. The police are keeping the lid on it. Tsukauchi is running interference. But the facade is cracking, Izuku. The villains, Shigaraki and this league, they know. They know I am getting weaker. And once the world realizes the pillar is crumbling, the roof will fall." Izuku gripped the bedsheets. "We have to. I have to work harder. I'll master 5%. Then 10. I'll be ready by the time I graduate. I promise. Tashinori opened his mouth to speak, a sad, devastatingly gentle smile forming on his lips, the kind of smile a parent gives a child who believes Santa Claus can fix a broken marriage. Before he could speak, the door to the infirmary didn't just open, it was unsealed. There was no knock. The heavy electronic lock disengaged with a sharp clack, and the door swung inward. 2 men in dark suits entered first. They wore earpieces and moved with the synchronized fluidity of apex predators. They didn't look at Izuku or Tashinori. They scanned the room, checked the corners, and then took positions on either side of the door. Detective Tsukachi said no visitors, Tashinori said, standing up. He tried to muster the authority of All Might, but in his skeletal form, it just looked like an old man standing up to a storm. This is a recovery room for a minor. Detective Tsukachi is a local police officer, a woman's voice said, drifting in from the hallway. His jurisdiction ends where national security begins. A woman stepped into the room. She was impeccable. Her suit was a sharp, slate gray, tailored to perfection. Her hair was pulled back in a severe style that allowed no stray strands. She walked with a rhythmic, confident cadence, click, 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 stopping at the foot of Izuku's bed. It was the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission. Izuku recognized her from the news, though she was rarely seen in the spotlight. She was the shadow behind the throne, the woman who signed the checks and buried the bodies. Madam President, Tashinori said, his voice dropping an octave. To what do I owe the pleasure? Sit down, Tashinori, she said. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. Her voice was like cold water, shocking and undeniable. You look terrible. I've had a rough day. We know, she said. She looked at Izuku. Her eyes were devoid of sympathy. They were calculating, dissecting him like a frog in a science class. Midoriya Izuku. Age 15. Quirk, superpower, or rather, quirk, one for all. The air left the room. Izuku stopped breathing. Tashinori froze, his hands trembling slightly. I see the look on your faces, the president said, pulling a tablet from under her arm and tapping the screen. Did you truly think you could hide a quirk transfer from the commission? We track quirks, Tashinori. We track genetics. A quirkless boy suddenly manifests a power that perfectly mimics the kinetic output of the number 1 hero immediately after passing the entrance exam? We aren't stupid. We allowed you your secret because it served the narrative. We allowed you to play mentor because we thought you had time. She dropped the tablet onto Izuku's legs. It displayed a video of the USJ fight. It showed All Might deflating into steam. It showed Izuku breaking his arm to punch the Nomu. But time, she said, leaning over the bed rail, is a luxury we no longer possess. What do you want? Tashinori demanded, stepping between her and Izuku. He is a student. He is a child. He is a vessel, she corrected. And right now, he is the holder of the most important tactical asset in Japan. She turned, walking to the window and closing the blinds, plunging the room into artificial twilight. Let me paint a picture for you, gentlemen. The attack on the USJ was not a random act of terror. It was a stress test. They sent a creature designed specifically to kill you, All Might. And it nearly worked. If the students hadn't interfered, if Sniper hadn't arrived, you would be dead. I survived, Tashinori grunted. You survived as a cripple, she snapped, her composure cracking for a microsecond to reveal a terrifying rage. We have the medical reports from 5 minutes ago. Your respiratory system is failing. Your quirk usage time is down to negligible levels. You are done, All Might. As of today, the era of All Might is over. Izuku felt a sob catch in his throat. Hearing it from her made it real in a way Tashinori's confession hadn't. The commission has run simulations, she continued, regaining her icy calm. When the public learns you are gone, really gone, crime rates will spike by 40% within the first month. Within 6 months, organized villain groups will consolidate. Within a year, we are looking at total societal collapse. The deterrent is gone. That is why I am at UA. Tashinori pleaded. To train the next generation. To train him. 3 years. She shouted, slamming her hand down on the metal tray table. The sound rang out like a gunshot. We do not have 3 years, Tashinori. We do not have 3 months. The League of Villains has a bioengineering facility. They have a warp user. They have a leader who can disintegrate matter. If we wait 3 years for this boy to go to prom and learn algebra, there won't be a society left for him to save. She took a deep breath, smoothing her jacket. Therefore, the Commission is invoking the Atlas Protocol. Section 9, Article 4 of the Metahuman Wartime Emergency Act. Tashinori went pale. That hasn't been used since the dawn of Quarks. It's unconstitutional. It's necessary, she replied. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick document, bound in red tape. She tossed it onto the bed next to Izuku's paralyzed legs. Izuku looked down. The bold letters at the top read, Special Dispensation for Provisional Hero Licensure Mandatory Draft. What is this? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. It is your emancipation papers, the president said simply. And your employment contract. Employment? Izuku looked up at her, confusion warring with fear. Effective immediately, Izuku Midoriya is withdrawn from UA High School. You will be placed under the direct custody of the Hero Public Safety Commission. You will undergo accelerated combat training, not rescue training, not ethics classes. Combat. Tactics. Suppression. You can't do that. Tashinori roared, his body puffing up into his muscle form for a split second before coughing blood and shrinking back down. He is a freshman. He can barely control 5% of the power. If you force him out there, he will die. He won't die, she said dismissively. Because we will script his engagements. We will build him a team. We will manufacture a new symbol. We don't need him to be All Might yet. We need him to be a figurehead, a prodigy. The mighty Deku, the heir apparent. We will put him on every billboard and news channel. We will show the villains that the power didn't die, it just moved. She looked at Izuku, her eyes boring into his soul. If we leave you in school, Midoriya, the villains will come for you there. They will burn UA to the ground to get to the weakened All Might and the baby successor. Your friends, that gravity girl, the engine boy, they will be collateral damage. Are you willing to let your classmates die so you can enjoy a normal high school life? The question hit Izuku like a physical blow. Izuku stammered. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Then you have to grow up. Tonight. Tashinori grabbed the papers and threw them on the floor. I refuse. I am his guardian in this. I will not let you turn him into a child soldier. The president sighed, as if dealing with a petulant toddler. She snapped her fingers. One of the suited men stepped forward and handed her a file. I expected resistance. So, here is the alternative. She opened the file. Inside was a series of photos. Inko Midoriya, shopping for groceries. Inko Midoriya, watering her plants. Izuku's heart stopped. If you refuse the draft, the president said, her voice devoid of malice, purely matter-of-fact, then One for All is classified as an unregulated, unregistered quirk of mass destruction. By law, individuals possessing such power without commission oversight are deemed S-class threats. She looked at Izuku. We will not arrest you, Midoriya. We will simply detain you. Indefinitely. In Tartarus. For the safety of the public. And your mother? We'll have to investigate her for harboring a dangerous asset. Her assets will be frozen. Her life will be dismantled. You're the heroes, Izuku whispered, tears spilling down his cheeks. You're supposed to be the good guys. We are the people who keep the wall standing, she replied coldly. We do the dirty work so All Might can smile for the cameras. But the camera is off now. She turned to Tashinori. And you, All Might. If you block this, we will release your medical records to the press tomorrow morning. We will tell the world you are dying. We will tell the world you chose a quirkless, unqualified child to succeed you out of sentimentality, endangering millions. Your legacy will be ashes. Tashinori stood there, trembling. He looked at the woman, then at the boy in the bed. The greatest hero in the world, rendered completely powerless by bureaucracy and blackmail. Why? Tashinori whispered. Why go this far? Because fear is the only thing holding this country together, she said. And we are running out of fear. She bent down, picked up the contract from the floor, and placed it gently on Izuku's lap. She also placed a black pen on top of it. The pen is right there, Midoriya. The choice is yours. UA is a dream. This is reality. Do you want to be a hero? This is what it costs. Izuku looked at the paper. The text was dense, filled with legal jargon about liability waivers and state secrets. But the meaning was clear. Sign this, and your life is over. Your childhood is over. He thought about Class 1A. He thought about Ochako's smile, Ida's arm chops, Bakugo's yelling. He thought of the cafeteria lunches and the feeling of finally belonging somewhere. Then he thought of the USJ. The fear in Ajui's eyes. The blood on Aizawa's face. If he stayed, he was a target. If he stayed, he was a danger to them. The president was cruel, but her logic was ironclad. Shigaraki wouldn't stop. If society crumbled, Yui wouldn't exist anyway. Izuku, don't. Toshinori wept openly now, tears streaming down his gaunt face. We'll find another way. We'll fight them. We can't fight the people who run the world. All might, Izuku whispered. He reached out with his shaking, uninjured left hand. He picked up the pen. It felt heavy, like it was made of lead. Izuku's voice cracked. He looked at All Might. You told me that I could become a hero. Yes, Toshinori choked out. Hero's sacrifice, Izuku said. The words tasted like ash. That's the first thing you taught me. Not this, Toshinori pleaded. Not your freedom. If I don't do this, Izuku said, looking at the photos of his mother, I lose everything anyway. He uncapped the pen. The room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Beep. 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 Izuku put the tip of the pen to the paper. His hand shook. He thought of the acceptance letter he had received just weeks ago. This is your Hero Academia. He scribbled his name. Izuku Midoriya. The ink looked black as oil. He dropped the pen. It rolled across the sheets and clattered onto the floor. The president smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had secured its meal. Wise choice, she said. She snatched the papers up before anyone could change their mind. Recovery Girl has been given high-grade stimulants and healing quirks from our private reserves. You will be healed enough to walk by tomorrow morning. A transport team will collect you at 0600 hours. She turned to leave, her heels clicking against the linoleum. Oh, she paused at the door. And Midoriya? Get rid of the red shoes. They're too childish. We're branding you as a titan, not a toddler. The door slammed shut. The lock engaged. Clack. The silence that followed was suffocating. Toshinori collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. He looked smaller than Izuku had ever seen him. I'm sorry, Toshinori sobbed. I'm so sorry. Izuku stared at the white ceiling. It didn't look like a hospital anymore. It looked like the lid of a box. It's okay, All Might, Izuku said, his voice hollow, devoid of the spark that had defined him. He closed his eyes, and a single tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. I guess I'm graduating early. Scene break. The next morning, the sun rose over Yui High, casting long shadows across the campus. It was a beautiful day. The birds were singing. The students of the general studies and support courses were walking through the gates, chatting about the news of the attack, unaware of the grim reality behind it. In the infirmary, the bed was empty. The sheets were stripped. Recovery Girl stood by the window, watching a black, unmarked van drive away from the school grounds. It moved fast, ignoring the speed bumps, disappearing down the winding road toward the city. She gripped her cane, her knuckles white. Those fools, she muttered, shaking her head. They're planting seeds in winter and expecting a harvest. Behind her, on the small bedside table, sat a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a note. It was a UA student ID card. Izuku Midoriya, Class 1A. It had been snapped in half. Scene break. The holding facility. The facility was underground. Izuku couldn't tell where, exactly, because the windows of the van had been blacked out, but the descent in the elevator had taken a full 2 minutes. The doors opened to reveal a concrete bunker that smelled of ozone and gun oil. Move, the agent next to him said. Izuku stepped out. He was wearing a plain gray tracksuit they had given him. His right arm was in a sophisticated brace, far more advanced than a standard cast. His legs felt stiff, aching deep in the marrow, but the experimental healing quirks they had pumped into him had knitted the bones back together. He walked down a long corridor lined with observation windows. Behind the glass, he saw people training. Not students. Pros. He saw a man with blades for fingers slicing through steel dummies. He saw a woman generating localized gravity fields to crush boulders. This is the nursery, the agent explained, seeing Izuku's gaze. It's where we train the heroes who don't fit the shiny public image. Shadow operatives. Black ops. Am I a shadow operative? Izuku asked. No, the agent said, stopping at a heavy metal door. You are the project. The agent scanned his badge. The door hissed open. Inside was a locker room. In the center of the room stood a mannequin. Izuku stared at it. It was wearing a costume. It was dark green, almost black. The material looked like ballistic weave, thick and armored. The white knee pads and elbow pads from his original design had been replaced with brushed titanium plating. The goofy rabbit ear mask was gone. In its place was a tactical rebreather and a hood. It didn't look like a hero costume. It looked like a soldier's uniform. Standing next to the mannequin was a woman. She was tall, with dual-colored hair, blue and pink. She was cleaning a massive, heavy-looking rifle. Lady Nagant. She didn't look up as Izuku entered. She just racked the bolt of her rifle, the metallic cha-chink echoing in the small room. So, she said, her voice dry and cynical. This is the savior? She finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. She looked at Izuku's trembling hands, his terrified posture, the way he flinched at the sound of the rifle. You're a baby, she scoffed. The commission has finally lost its mind. I'm Midoriya Izuku, he stammered, bowing instinctively. Stop that, Nagant snapped. You bow to no one now. You are a symbol of absolute power. If you bow, the public thinks you're weak. If you're weak, the villains eat you. She walked over to him, towering over his small frame. She poked him in the chest with the barrel of her rifle, hard. Listen to me, kid. Forget UA, forget Plus Ultra. Forget saving cats from trees. From this moment on, you are a weapon. The president points you, and you fire. That is the only reason they let you out of that cell. I just want to save people, Izuku whispered. Nagant laughed. It was a bitter, jagged sound. Saving people is the easy part, she said, turning back to her gear. Living with what you have to do to save them? That's the hard part. She pointed to the costume. Put it on. We have a patrol in 20 minutes. And kid? Izuku looked at her. Don't smile, she said. Not yet. You haven't earned it. Izuku reached out and touched the cold, armored fabric of the costume. It felt lifeless. He began to undress. He took off the gray tracksuit. He put on the heavy boots. He strapped on the armor. It was heavy. It restricted his movement, forcing him to stand straighter, stiffer. He pulled the hood up. He looked in the mirror on the wall. He didn't recognize the person staring back. The eyes were the same, green, wide, frightened, but everything else was wrong. He looked dangerous. He looked like someone who hurt people. Ready? Nagant asked from the doorway. Izuku took a deep breath. He balled his fists. He felt the hum of one for all beneath his skin, a thrumming energy that felt more volatile than ever. Ready, he lied. He followed her out of the room, leaving the boy named Deku behind in the pile of gray clothes on the floor. Scene break, Class 1A. Where is he? Katsuki Bakugo kicked the desk, sending it skidding across the classroom floor. The silence in Class 1A was thick enough to choke on. Aizawa stood at the podium, his entire head wrapped in bandages, looking like a mummy that had been dragged through a car wreck. He shouldn't even be here. He should be in the ICU. But he had discharged himself an hour ago. Midoriya has been transferred, Aizawa said through the bandages. His voice was muffled and flat. Transferred? Uraraka stood up, her chair clattering behind her. Where? Why? Is he hurt? Is it because of his arms? It is a personal matter, Aizawa said. He wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the attendance sheet. Midoriya's name had been blacked out with a marker. That's bullshit. Bakugo roared. He marched up to the podium, sparks popping in his palms. The nerd doesn't just transfer. He's been obsessed with UA since he was in diapers. He wouldn't leave, especially not after. Bakugo stopped. He remembered the look on Deku's face when he jumped at the Nomu. The sheer, suicidal determination. Did they kick him out? Bakugo asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Did the school kick him out because he got hurt saving All Might? Sit down, Bakugo, Aizawa said. But there was no heat in it. Aizawa looked tired. Defeated. Tell us. I cannot. Aizawa snapped, his single visible eye flashing red. He gripped the podium until the wood creaked. It is out of my hands. It is out of the principal's hands. Midoriya is gone. That is all you need to know. Aizawa turned to the blackboard, but his hand was shaking so badly he couldn't hold the chalk. He dropped it. It shattered on the floor. Self-study, Aizawa rasped. I will be in the staff room. He walked out, leaving the class in stunned silence. As Aizawa walked down the hallway, he passed the principal's office. The door was ajar. Inside, he could hear Nisa on the phone, his usually cheerful voice shouting, "This is unconscionable. You are stealing my student." A pause. I don't care about the act. He is a child. Aizawa leaned against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He pulled a pouch of jelly drink from his pocket but didn't open it. He knew what happened. He knew the HPSC. He had worked with them before. They had taken the kid. Damn it, Aizawa whispered, banging his head gently against the wall. I promised I wouldn't let them take any more. Scene break, the debut. 2 days later, the Shibuya crossing was packed. The giant screens that lined the buildings were playing the usual loop of commercials and news updates about the USJ attack. The mood in the city was tense. People walked quickly, eyes down, shoulders hunched. The illusion of safety had been punctured. Suddenly, every screen went black. A collective gasp went through the crowd. People stopped walking. Had the villains hacked the feed? Was this another attack? Then, the HPSC logo appeared, a golden hawk holding a shield. Citizens of Japan, a calm, authoritative voice boomed from the speakers. In recent days, rumors have circulated regarding the health of All Might and the safety of our nation. The screen cut to a live feed. It was a press conference. The HPSC president stood at a podium. The threats we face are evolving, she said. And so, we must evolve with them. All Might remains our symbol, but even Atlas needs support to hold up the sky. She gestured to the side of the stage. The Hero Commission is proud to present the future. A prodigy discovered and trained in secret. The vanguard of the new generation. Smoke machines hissed. A spotlight cut through the gloom. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. He was small, but the camera angles made him look larger. The dark green armor gleamed under the stage lights. The tactical hood was up, casting a shadow over his eyes. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He walked to the center of the stage and stood at parade rest, hands clasped behind his back, feet shoulder-width apart. He is the shield of the commission. The fist of justice. Please welcome. The president paused for effect. The mighty Deku. On the screen, the camera zoomed in on Izuku's face. In the crowd, Ochako Uraraka, who was out shopping with her parents, dropped her bags. Deku-kun? She breathed. On the screen, Izuku looked directly into the camera. His eyes were dead. He looked terrified, exhausted, and incredibly lonely. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, or as if someone had shouted an order in his earpiece, he forced a smile. It wasn't the bright, sunny smile of All Might. It was a baring of teeth. It was the smile of someone who was about to be hit, and was trying to brace for the impact. I am here, Izuku said into the microphone. His voice was modulated, deeper than it should be. To ensure your safety. The crowd erupted into confused applause. They cheered because they were told to cheer. They cheered because they were desperate for a savior. But in a dark bar in Kamino Ward, a man with hands covering his face watched the broadcast on a small, dusty TV. Tamura Shigaraki scratched his neck, his skin flaking away under his fingernails. A cheat code, Shigaraki rasped. They're trying to use a cheat code. He began to laugh, a dry, raspy sound. They think changing the player will save them. But the game is already over. Shigaraki pointed a finger at the screen, directly at Izuku's forced smile. Game on, little hero. Let's see how many lives you have. The morning rain in Musudafu was a gray, miserable drizzle that slicked the pavement and turned the world into a blurred watercolor painting. It was the kind of weather that seeped into the bones, amplifying the aches of injuries that hadn't quite healed. Ochako Uraraka gripped the strap of her backpack, her knuckles white. The train ride to Ue High was usually a cacophony of students from other schools chattering, businessmen reading papers, and the rhythmic clack-clack of the tracks. Today, it felt silent. She stared at the digital advertisement scrolling above the carriage door. It was a news ticker about the USJ incident. Security breach at Premier Hero School. Villains apprehended. All Might secures victory. Victory. The word tasted like copper in her mouth. She rubbed her arm, remembering the feeling of helplessness as 13 was ripped apart by their own quirk. She remembered the sheer, overwhelming terror of the villain with the hands covering his face. But mostly, she remembered the sound of a smash that wasn't All Might's. She looked to her left, instinctively expecting to see a mop of unruly green hair and a muttering boy scribbling in a notebook. But the seat was occupied by a salaryman asleep with his mouth open. Get it together, Ochako, she whispered to herself. He's probably just early. Or late. He's probably recovering. The train hissed to a halt at the station. As the doors opened, the flood of UA students began the trek up the hill. The atmosphere was different today. The usual excitement of attending the most prestigious school in the country had been replaced by a heavy, nervous energy. The press was still camped at the gates, though the newly installed security barriers kept them further back. Hey! Uraraka! She turned to see Tenya Ida marching toward her. His movements were stiff, robotic, but lacked his usual excessive energy. He looked tired. Good morning, Ida-kun, she said, forcing a smile. A somber morning, Ida corrected, adjusting his glasses. But we must return to our duties. As students of the hero course, we must show resilience in the face of adversity. That is what Midoriya-kun would do. He stumbled over the name. Have you heard from him? Uraraka asked, her voice dropping. I sent him a text yesterday. And the day before. He hasn't read them. Ida frowned, looking at the ground. I attempted to call his home. The line was disconnected. I assume, perhaps the police have them in protective custody? Because of the villains targeting the class? Maybe, Uraraka said, though a knot of dread tightened in her stomach. Yeah. That makes sense. They're just being safe. They walked through the main gates, flashing their IDs. The sensor beeped green. Inside the building, the hallways of UA felt cavernous. They walked to Class 1A. The giant door, which had once seemed so intimidating, now just looked like a barrier keeping the world out. Inside, the class was already assembling. The mood was subdued. Ajiri was sitting on her desk, staring at the rain. Kirishima and Siro were talking in hushed tones. Tokoyami was brooding more intensely than usual, but everyone's eyes kept darting to the same spot, the seat behind Bakugo. The desk near the window. It was empty. Not just empty, it was vacant. There were no stray eraser shavings. No notebook left behind. The surface was pristine, reflecting the gray light from the window. Where is the nerd? Katsuki Bakugo sat in his chair, feet on his desk, but his posture was rigid. He wasn't looking at the empty desk, but his peripheral vision was locked on it. We don't know, Ribbit, Ajiri said softly. Recovery girl said his injuries were bad. He broke everything, Kirishima added, rubbing the back of his neck. I mean, did you see his arm? It looked like purple jelly. He's probably still in the ICU. He's not in the ICU, Bakugo growled. The class went silent. What do you mean, Bakugo? Yayarosa asked. I walked past the nurse's office this morning, Bakugo muttered, his eyes narrowing. The bed is made. The chart is gone. If he was sick, he'd be there. If he was dead, we'd know. Don't say that. Uraraka snapped, her voice rising. Don't say he's dead. I didn't say he was dead, round face. I said he's gone. Before the argument could escalate, the door slid open. Shota Aizawa entered. The class gasped. He was a walking sarcophagus. His entire head was wrapped in bandages. His arms were in slings. He walked with a limp so severe it looked painful just to watch. Sensei! Ida shot up. You should not be walking. Your injuries. My health is none of your concern, Aizawa rasped. His voice was muffled through the layers of gauze, flat and devoid of emotion. He hobbled to the podium and leaned heavily against it. The fight is not over. We have work to do. The sports festival is approaching. Sports festival? Kaminari squeaked. After villains just tried to kill us? Especially because they tried to kill us, Aizawa said. We show them we are not afraid. We show them the system is still functioning. He picked up a tablet with his free hand, or rather, the fingers protruding from the cast. He began to take attendance. Aoyama, we, Ashido, here, Ajiri, Ribbit. He went down the list. The tension in the room grew with every name. Koda, here, Sado, here, Shoji, here. He paused. The next name on the list alphabetically was Midoriya. The silence stretched. Aizawa didn't look up. He didn't speak the name. Mineta, Aizawa said. H here. Mineta squeaked. Wait. Uraraka stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. Sensei. You skipped him. Midoriya. Is he okay? Aizawa set the tablet down. He looked at the class with his single visible eye. It was bloodshot and tired. Midoriya Izuku has been transferred, Aizawa said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Transferred? Kirishima asked, standing up. To where? General Studies? Another school? Just transferred, Aizawa repeated. Due to personal circumstances involving his family and the nature of his quirk, he has been withdrawn from UA High School effective immediately. Withdrawn? Bakugo's voice was low, dangerous. He took his feet off the desk and stood up slowly. You're lying. Watch your tone, Bakugo, Aizawa warned, though there was no heat in it. The nerd has wanted to be here his whole life, Bakugo said, walking toward the podium. He broke his limbs 1,000 times to get in. He wouldn't just quit. Did you expel him? Did you kick him out because he's a liability? It was not my decision, Aizawa said. And it was not the principal's. Then whose was it? Bakugo yelled, small explosions popping in his palms. Where is he? That is classified, Aizawa said. Sit down, Bakugo. Or I will have you removed. Bakugo stared at his teacher. He saw something in Aizawa's visible eye. It wasn't anger. It wasn't annoyance. It was shame. Aizawa looked away. Midoriya is gone, Aizawa said to the class, his voice sounding incredibly old. Do not look for him. Do not try to contact him. Focus on your training. If you want to survive this hero society, you need to be stronger than he was. It was a lie. They all heard it. Aizawa was reading a script. Uraraka sank back into her chair. She looked at the empty desk. It felt like a grave. Part 2, The Reconditioning. At the exact moment Aizawa was taking attendance, Izuku Midoriya was screaming. He wasn't in a classroom. He was in a room known as the box. It was a cubic chamber, 30 feet by 30 feet, lined with impact-absorbent tiles that were currently stained with scorch marks. The lighting was strobe-like, flashing erratically to disrupt depth perception and induce nausea. Again, a voice commanded from the loudspeakers. Izuku lay on the floor, gasping for air. His new costume, the dark green tactical armor, felt heavy, suffocating. Sweat drenched his hair, stinging his eyes. His body was screaming in protest. The healing the commission had subjected him to had knit his bones, but it hadn't restored his stamina. He was running on fumes and adrenaline. He pushed himself up. His arms trembled. I need a minute, Izuku wheezed. Zap! A jolt of electricity surged through the collar around his neck. It wasn't enough to incapacitate, but it was enough to cause blinding pain. No breaks, the voice said. It was his handler, Agent Kuros. The villains do not take breaks, asset. Stand up. Izuku gritted his teeth and forced himself to his feet. Simulation for beta. Suppression. Lethal force authorized for targets marked red. The room hummed. Holographic projectors whirred to life. 3 figures materialized. They weren't the blocky robots of the UA entrance exam. These were high-fidelity projections of people. They looked like street thugs, knives, chains, mismatched clothes. But they moved with the speed of pros. Begin. The 3 targets lunged. Izuku didn't think. He reacted. He channeled one for all, full cowling. The green lightning crackled around him. 5%. Maintain 5%. He dashed forward. The first target swung a lead pipe. Izuku ducked, weaving under the blow. In his old life, 3 days ago, he would have grabbed the weapon and tossed it away, or punched the air to create wind pressure. But the training had been specific. Efficient. Brutal. Silent. Izuku stepped into the guard of the hologram. He drove his armored elbow into the target's solar plexus, then followed with a chop to the throat. The hologram flickered and dissolved into red pixels. 1 down. The second target threw a knife. Izuku twisted, the blade grazing his shoulder pad. He closed the distance. Smash! He cried out instinctively, winding up a punch. Zap! The collar shocked him again mid-swing. His muscles seized. The punch went wide. The third target, a brute with a sledgehammer, slammed the weapon into Izuku's ribs. The impact threw him across the room. He slammed into the wall and slid down. Wrong, Kurosa's voice barked. We discussed this. Smash is a tell. It telegraphs your move. It is a waste of breath. And it links you to All Might. You are not All Might. You are a predator. Predators do not announce their attacks. Izuku coughed, tasting blood. He clutched his side. The armor had absorbed most of the blow, but the kinetic force still rattled his organs. But, it helps me focus, Izuku whispered. Focus silently, Kurosa replied. The enemy uses your voice to triangulate your position. Silence is survival. Get up. Izuku looked at his hands. They were shaking. I don't want to fight like this, he said. This isn't saving people. You aren't saving people today, Midoriya, Kurosa said coldly. You are saving the state. And the state requires a soldier, not a mascot. Now, neutralize the final target, or we increase the voltage. Izuku looked at the remaining hologram. The brute with the hammer. It had a face. It looked vaguely like a man he had seen in the news, a villain who had robbed a bank. Izuku closed his eyes for a second. He pictured All Might's smile. It felt a million miles away. He opened his eyes. The green lightning turned jagged. He moved. He didn't yell. He didn't telegraph. He moved like a bullet. The hologram struggled, then dissolved. The lights in the room stabilized. The strobe effect stopped. Time, 42 seconds, Kurosa said. Acceptable. But sloppy. You hesitated on the second kill. The door to the box hissed open. Agent Kurosa stepped in. He was a nondescript man in a suit, holding a tablet. Beside him was Lady Nagant, looking bored. He's got the power, Nagant said, leaning against the wall. But he lacks the killer instinct. He's still thinking like a high schooler. We will burn that out of him, Kurosa said. He walked up to Izuku and handed him a water bottle. Drink. You have PR training in 20 minutes. Izuku took the bottle. His hands were numb. PR? Public relations, Nagant said. You have to sell the lie, kid. Being a hero is 10% kicking ass and 90% making people believe you're kicking ass for them. Izuku drank the water too fast, nearly choking. I have to go back to school. My friends, they'll worry. Kurosa stared at him. You don't have friends, Midoriya. You have fans. And you have liabilities. The sooner you understand the difference, the safer your friends will be. Kurosa tapped his tablet. A projection appeared in the air. It was a live feed of UA High. It showed the cafeteria. Izuku could see Uraraka and Ida sitting at a table, looking despondent. See them? Kurosa asked softly. They are safe because you are here. If you leave, if you fail, if you try to contact them, the Commission cannot guarantee their protection from the villains hunting one for all. Do you understand? Izuku stared at the screen. He wanted to reach out and touch it. He wanted to tell Ida to stop frowning. He wanted to tell Uraraka he was sorry. I understand, Izuku whispered. Good, Kurosa said, snapping the projection off. Now go shower. You smell like ozone and fear. Part 3, The Investigation. Lunch rush at UA was usually a chaotic affair, filled with the smells of curry and the sound of laughter. Today, the noise level was dampened. Bakugo Katsuki sat alone at a corner table. His tray of spicy mapo tofu was untouched. He was staring at the staff table. All Might wasn't there. Present Mike was there, looking unusually subdued. Midnight was picking at her food. Snipe was reading a newspaper. Bakugo's mind was racing. He replayed every interaction he'd had with Deku since the start of the year. The Black Whip quirk. The secrets. The hushed conversations with All Might in the hallway. He's been transferred. Bullshit, Bakugo muttered. He crushed his chopsticks in his hand. He stood up, ignoring the glances from the other students. He dumped his tray and walked out of the cafeteria. He didn't go to the classroom. He went to the teacher's lounge. The hallway was empty. Bakugo moved with the silence of a hunter. He reached the door to the lounge and pressed his ear against it. Nothing. He moved further down the hall, toward the small office All Might used for his counseling sessions. He heard coughing. A wet, hacking cough that sounded like lungs tearing apart. Bakugo didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. He kicked the door open. All Might. Inside, Toshinori Yagi jumped, spilling tea all over his desk. He was in his skeletal form, looking even more gaunt than usual. He was wearing a baggy yellow suit that swallowed him whole. Young Bakugo. Toshinori wheezed, wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. It came away spotted with blood. You shouldn't be here. The bell hasn't rung. Bakugo slammed the door shut behind him and locked it. Cut the crap, Bakugo growled. He marched up to the desk, his palms smoking. Where is he? Toshinori looked at the boy. He saw the genuine distress behind the anger. He saw the fear. I assume you mean young Midoriya, Toshinori sighed, slumping in his chair. Don't give me the transferred line, Bakugo snapped. I know you two have a secret. I know about the quirk. I saw him use your moves. I saw you talking to him after the battle trial. He's your bastard child or something, isn't he? Or your apprentice? Toshinori flinched. It is complicated, young Bakugo. Did you fire him? Bakugo slammed his hands on the desk. Did you fire him because he got hurt saving you at the USJ? No! Toshinori shouted, the sudden volume startling both of them. No. I would never. Toshinori's voice broke. He looked down at his hands. I didn't send him away, Bakugo. They took him. Bakugo froze. Who? The villains? No, Toshinori whispered. The commission. The room went cold. Bakugo knew about the HPSC. His mother talked about them, the suits who decided who got licenses and who got arrested. Why? Bakugo asked. Because I am dying, Toshinori said. He said it so simply that it took a moment for the words to register. Toshinori stood up and lifted his shirt. Bakugo recoiled. The scar on All Might's side was purple and grotesque, a crater in his flesh. My time is ending, Toshinori explained, his voice trembling. The government knows. They panicked. They needed a replacement immediately. They couldn't wait for Midoriya to graduate, so they invoked a war draft. Bakugo stared at the skeletal man. The #1 hero. The invincible symbol. So? Bakugo's voice shook. So they just stole him? And you let them? I had no choice. Toshinori cried, tears welling in his sunken eyes. They threatened to lock him away. To ruin his family. To destroy everything if he didn't comply. You're All Might. Bakugo screamed. You're supposed to be able to do anything. I am just a man. Toshinori yelled back. A weak, dying man. The silence that followed was deafening. Bakugo looked at his idol. He looked at the man he had worshipped since he was 4 years old. And for the first time, he didn't see a god. He saw a failure. He looked up to you, Bakugo whispered. He worshipped the ground you walked on. He broke his bones for you. And you sold him to the feds. I am trying to fix it, Toshinori pleaded. I am calling in favors. You're doing nothing, Bakugo spat. He turned around and walked to the door. Young Bakugo, please, Toshinori called out. You cannot tell anyone. If the class knows, they could be targeted. Midoriya did this to protect you all. Bakugo stopped at the door. He didn't turn around. To protect us? Bakugo let out a dry, humorless laugh. He's the one who needs protecting. And the strongest hero in the world couldn't do it. Bakugo unlocked the door. Don't talk to me, Bakugo said. Don't try to teach me. You're not a hero. You're just a suit. He slammed the door, leaving All Might alone in the dark. Part 4, The Masquerade. The makeup chair was uncomfortable. Izuku sat still while a team of 3 stylists worked on him. One was applying concealer to the bags under his eyes. Another was using airbrush makeup to hide the freckles on his cheeks. The freckles make him look too young, the lead stylist muttered. Cover them. We want hardened veteran, not boy next door. Got it, the assistant said, spraying a cold mist over Izuku's face. Izuku stared at his reflection. With the freckles gone and his skin pale, he looked like a porcelain doll. A dangerous doll. Hair? Slick it back. Or, no, keep the mess, but make it look intentional. Windswept. Heroic. They tugged at his hair, applying gel and spray until it stood up in stiff, unnatural spikes. Costume check. Izuku stood up. The green armor was polished to a shine. The red utility belt was heavy with gadgets he barely knew how to use: flash bangs, smoke pellets, capture tape. A woman in a sharp blazer walked in. She held a stack of cue cards. This was his PR handler, Ms. Joke. No, not the hero Ms. Joke. This was a corporate PR shark named Sato, no relation to his classmate. All right, Deku, Sato said, clapping her hands. Let's review the narrative. If a reporter asks about your age, what do you say? Izuku recited the line flatly. I say that heroism isn't about age, it's about spirit. I've been training for this my entire life. With more conviction. Sato snapped. You have to believe it. Again. Heroism isn't about age, Izuku said, trying to inject false confidence. It's about spirit. Better. If they ask about your connection to All Might is the pillar we all look up to. I am simply doing my part to support the foundation he built. Good. Vague, respectful, but implies succession. If they ask about your school, Izuku hesitated. I say that I am receiving specialized private tutelage to maximize my potential for the public good. Excellent. Never mention UA. Never mention Class 1A. You are a singular entity. You emerged from the ether to save Japan. You have no past, only a future. She handed him a piece of paper. This is the script for your first televised interview tomorrow evening. Memorize it. Word for word. Any deviation, and we cut the feed. And if we cut the feed, Agent Kuros takes you back to the box. Understood? Yes, Izuku said. Smile. Izuku forced the corners of his mouth up. It felt like stretching old rubber. Wider. Show teeth. Make them feel safe. Izuku bared his teeth. In the mirror, he looked like a skull. Perfect, Sato said, checking her watch. Now you have a scheduled wellness call. Izuku's heart jumped. My mom? Yes. 5 minutes. Monitored. Recorded. Stick to the script. You are at a special intensive training camp for top prospects. You are safe. You are happy. You love it here. She handed him a sleek black phone. Izuku took it. His hands trembled so much he almost dropped it. He dialed the number he knew by heart. Ring, ring. Hello? Izuku? Inko's voice. It was thick, wet. She had been crying. Izuku felt his throat close up. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell her to run. He wanted to tell her he was scared. Hi, Mom, he choked out. Oh, Izuku. Oh, my baby. Inko sobbed on the other end. I've been so worried. The school said they said you were selected for something special, but it happened so fast. Why didn't you come home to pack? Are you eating? I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said, looking at Sato, who was tracing a finger across her throat in a warning gesture. I'm eating. The food is great. It's a special camp. For people with strong quirks. But why can't you come home? Inko asked. When can I see you? I don't know, Izuku said. The training is really intense. We have to stay on base. Izuku, Inko's voice dropped to a whisper. Are you safe? Please tell me the truth. Izuku looked at the mirror. He saw the armored soldier. He saw the PR agent watching him like a hawk. He saw the scars on his hand. I'm safe, Mom, he lied. I'm going to be a great hero. Just like All Might. Isn't that what we always wanted? I just want you to be happy, Inko wept. I am, Izuku said, tears streaming silently down his face, ruining the makeup. I'm so happy, Mom. I have to go now. Training. I love you, Izuku. I love. Click. Sato took the phone from his hand. A bit emotional, she critiqued. But passable. Make up. He's crying. Fix his face. We have a photo shoot in 10. Izuku stood there, letting the tears fall until the makeup team swarmed him with sponges and tissues. He felt hollowed out. The boy who loved Katsudan and hero analysis notebooks was being erased, layer by layer, replaced by a statue made of Teflon and lies. Part 5, The Sunset. The school day ended at UA. The bell rang, signaling freedom for hundreds of students. But for Class 1A, it was a release from a day of tension. They packed their bags in silence. We should visit his house, Kirishima whispered to Kaminari. Aizawa said not to, Kaminari whispered back. Said it would cause trouble. Since when do we listen to rules when our friend is in trouble? Kirishima countered. Since the rules involve the government, Jiro interjected, plugging her earphone jacks into her phone. Look, if Midoriya got drafted or whatever, poking our noses and might make it worse for him. So we do nothing? Uraraka asked, her voice trembling. We get stronger, Todoroki said. He was standing by the door, his mismatched eyes cold. If they took him because he has power, then we need to have enough power to get him back. Whatever is happening, we aren't ready for it yet. The class filed out, leaving the room empty, except for Bakugo. He sat at his desk, staring out the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky a bruised purple. The sunset cast long, distorted shadows across the classroom. He turned around in his chair and looked at the empty desk behind him. He reached out and ran his hand across the surface. It was cold. For years he had wanted Deku gone. He had wanted the pebble out of his path. He had told him to take a swan dive off a roof. Now Deku was gone. And the world felt wrong. The axis had shifted. Damn nerd, Bakugo whispered, his voice cracking. He remembered their fight at the battle trial. He remembered Deku yelling, I'm the Deku who always does his best. Bakugo clenched his fist. Sparks danced across his skin, scorching the wood of his own desk. You better not die, Bakugo threatened the empty air. You better not die before I get to beat you properly. He grabbed his bag and stormed out of the classroom, slamming the door shut. The room was silent. On the floor, under Izuku's empty desk, lay a single, forgotten item. It was a small piece of paper that had fallen out of his notebook days ago. It was a drawing of a hero costume, but not the green one. It was a sketch of a team. All Might in the center. Bakugo on the left. Uraraka on the right. And Izuku in the middle, smiling. A draft from the air conditioning blew the paper across the floor, sliding it under a cabinet, into the dark. Part 6, The First Night. Night had fallen over the HPSC facility. Izuku was in his quarters. It was a small, sterile room. A cot, a toilet, a sink. No posters. No personal items. He was exhausted. His body ached in places he didn't know existed. His mind was a blur of scripts and combat tactics. He lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. He tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw the holograms dissolving. He saw the disappointment in Aizawa's eye. He sat up and looked at his hands. He activated One for All. The red veins glowed. The green lightning sparked, casting erratic shadows on the walls. 5%. He clenched his fist. I am here, he whispered to the empty room. But there was no one to hear him. Suddenly the door buzzed. A slot opened at the bottom, and a tray of food was slid in. Protein paste, vitamins, water, and a note. Izuku picked up the note. It wasn't from the commission. It was handwritten on a scrap of napkin. Don't let the fire go out. Lent, Lady Nagant. Izuku looked at the note, then at the lightning in his hand. He wasn't sure if she meant the quirk, or his soul. He ate the paste. It tasted like nothing. He drank the water. He lay back down and pulled the thin blanket over his shoulders. He closed his eyes and visualized the map of Japan. He visualized UA. He visualized his dorm room that he would never see. He was a hero now. A pro. And he had never been more terrified in his life. The locker room smelled of gun oil and antiseptic. It was a cold, chemical scent that coated the back of the throat and refused to leave. Izuku Midoriya sat on a metal bench, his head in his hands. The silence of the underground bunker was oppressive, broken only by the hum of the ventilation system and the rhythmic click-clack of Lady Nagant checking her ammunition. He looked up at his reflection in the polished steel of the locker opposite him. The boy staring back was almost unrecognizable. Gone was the teal jumpsuit Inko had sewn with love and clumsy stitching. Gone were the bright white elbow pads and the goofy respirator that resembled a smile. In their place was the Commission's design, the Atlas suit Mark I. It was a marvel of engineering, and Izuku hated it. The suit was woven from ballistic fibers dyed a green so dark it was almost black. Plates of matte-finished titanium covered his shins, thighs, chest, and forearms. The gloves were reinforced with impact-dampening gel, and the boots were heavy, magnetic-soled combat treads designed for crushing debris and bones. The hood was integrated into a high collar that housed a voice modulator and a rebreather, stripping away his humanity and replacing it with the silhouette of a soldier. "Stop fidgeting, Kana Tsutsumi," Lady Nagant said without looking up. She was sliding specialized rounds into the magazine of her rifle, which was currently folded down into a briefcase-sized configuration. "The armor creates noise when the plates rub together. You sound like a nervous beetle." "It's heavy," Izuku murmured. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, flatter, harder. "It's supposed to be," Nagant replied. She snapped the magazine into place and looked at him. Her eyes were sharp, devoid of the warmth he was used to from UA teachers. "It's not a costume, Midoriya. It's a tank. You aren't going out there to wave at fans. You're going out to absorb damage so the civilians don't have to." She stood up, swinging the heavy rifle case onto her back as if it weighed nothing. She wore a sleek, utilitarian version of her hero outfit, optimized for urban camouflage. "Briefing in 5, she said. "Put the mask on." Izuku hesitated. He reached for the metal faceplate that attached to the cowl. It covered the lower half of his face, leaving only his eyes exposed, eyes that were currently wide with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. "Nagant-san," Izuku started, his hand hovering over the mask. "About the rules of engagement. We went over this," she cut him off, walking to the door. "We are not police. We are not generic pros patrolling for purse snatchers. We are the scalpel. We cut out the infection before the patient knows they're sick. But if they surrender..." Nagant stopped. She turned slowly, her bicolored hair shifting. "If they surrender, we detain," she said. "But where we're going?" "They won't surrender. These aren't bank robbers, kid. They're trigger distributors. They're high on their own supply and backed into a corner. Hesitation gets you killed. Worse, it gets me killed." She opened the door. The harsh white light of the corridor spilled in. "Mask. Now." Izuku took a breath that hitched in his chest. He pressed the metal plate to his face. It locked in with a magnetic hiss, sealing him in. The HUD, heads-up display, flickered to life, projecting vitals and a mini-map onto his retina. System online. "One for all. Output limited to 5%. He stood up. The boots clanked against the floor. "Ready," he said. The voice modulator deepened his pitch, stripping the tremor from his tone. "Let's go," Nagant said. "The car is waiting." Part 2, The Ride to Hell. The transport was an unmarked black van with reinforced plating and bulletproof glass. The interior was cramped, filled with surveillance equipment and monitors. Agent Kuros sat in the front passenger seat, tapping away on a laptop. Izuku and Nagant sat in the back, facing each other. The city rolled by outside, muted by the tinted windows. Muzidafa looked different from here. When he was a student, the city was a playground of potential heroics. Now, it looked like a target-rich environment. "Target location is the warehouse district in Minato," Kuros announced, his voice filtering through the comms in Izuku's ear. "Intel suggests a shipment of Type 3 trigger arrived via the harbor 2 hours ago. The distribution cell is known as the Red Jackals. Estimated hostiles, 15 to 20. Quirks?" Nagant asked, checking the scope of her rifle. "Mostly mutation types. Enhancers? With the trigger, expect unstable power levels. The leader is a man named Goro Haka. Quirk piston. He can pressurize his limbs to deliver hydraulic strikes. He has a history of crushing skulls. He is considered A-rank dangerous. Izuku gripped his knees. Are the police involved? Negative, Kuro said. The police are setting up a perimeter 3 blocks away. This is an HPSC sanitize operation. We go in, we secure the product, we neutralize the threats. Police handle the paperwork after we leave. Sanitize, Izuku whispered. The word felt sterile, clinical. It hid the violence inherent in the act. You have a problem with the vocabulary? Nagan asked, her eyes closed, resting. Izuku looked at his armored hands. All Might always worked with the police. He always made sure. All Might is a parade float, Nagan snapped, opening one eye. He floats above the mess. Do you think crime just vanished for 30 years? No. All Might smiled in the daylight, and people like me cleaned the gutters in the dark so he wouldn't get his boots dirty. She leaned forward, the cynicism radiating off her like heat. You think this society is built on peace? It's built on a pile of broken villains and silenced threats. You wanted to be a hero, right? Well, congratulations. You just got promoted to janitor. I want to save people, Izuku insisted, though the conviction was harder to summon. Even villains. They're people too. Nagat laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Hold on to that thought when a meth head with knives for fingers tries to peel your face off. Let's see if your empathy survives the night. The van slowed down. The streetlights became sparse. The buildings grew taller, grimmer, industrial warehouses made of corrugated metal and rusted steel. LZ approaching, Kuro said. Drop in 30 seconds. Nagant, you take overwatch on the crane tower. Atlas, you are the breacher. Front door. Make noise. Draw their fire. Understood, Nagant said. Atlas? Kuro's prompted. Izuku swallowed the bile in his throat. Understood. The van stopped. The back doors swung open into the rainy night. Nagant vanished instantly, leaping up a fire escape with the grace of a cat, her rifle unfolding in midair. Izuku stepped out. The rain hit his armor with a rhythmic patter. He stood before a massive sliding metal door. Inside, he could hear thumping bass music and shouting. Operation start, Kuro's voice commanded. Izuku clenched his fist. Green lightning crackled around his body, illuminating the rain. One for all. Full calling. 5%. He didn't knock. Part 3 breach and clear. Izuku kicked the door. With 5% of one for all behind the strike, the metal buckled. The locking mechanism shattered with a sound like a gunshot, and the heavy door flew inward, screeching across the concrete floor. The music inside didn't stop, but the shouting did. The warehouse was cavernous, lit by hanging construction lights that cast harsh, yellow glares. Crates were stacked high, forming a maze. In the center, a group of men were gathered around a table piled with red vials. They froze, looking at the figure in the doorway. A dark green demon with glowing eyes and lightning arcing off his body. Heroes! One of them screamed. It's just one kid! Another shouted. He was a large man with spikes protruding from his shoulders. Get him! 3 of them rushed Izuku. Don't think. React. Izuku dashed forward. The world slowed down. He saw the first attacker swing a crowbar. Izuku ducked, the wind of the swing ruffling his hood. Capture. Subdue. He swept the man's legs. The thug hit the ground hard. Izuku grabbed a roll of capture tape from his belt, a gadget he had practiced with for hours in the box, and slapped it over the man's wrists. Stay down! Izuku shouted, his modulator booming. The second attacker, a woman whose hair was made of writhing snakes, lunged. The snakes snapped at Izuku's face. He leaped backward, bouncing off a crate. He pushed off the wood, using the momentum to spin in the air and land a heel kick to her shoulder. She went down, groaning. Stop! Izuku yelled at the remaining group. I don't want to hurt you. Surrender now and you'll get a fair trial. The warehouse went silent for a second. Then laughter. Fair trial? A man in the back sneered. He held a red vial, trigger, and stabbed it into his neck. There ain't no trials for scum like us, hero. Only Tartarus. His muscles bulged. His skin turned a violent shade of crimson. His eyes rolled back, leaving only white sclera. He roared, a sound that was more animal than human. Nagant! Izuku yelled into his comms. He's dosing! Requesting backup. Deal with it, Atlas. Nagant's voice came back, cool and detached. I'm watching the exits. You're the beat cop. Put him down, the hulking villain charged. He was fast, unnaturally fast. He smashed through a wooden crate, sending splinters flying like shrapnel. Izuku crossed his arms to block. Boom! The impact was like being hit by a car. Izuku slid backward, his boots carving grooves into the concrete. His arms went numb. 5% isn't enough, he gritted out. The villain swung again. Izuku dodged, but the villain's fist clipped his side. The armor plating cracked. Pain, sharp and hot, flared in his ribs. Die, little hero! The villain screamed, saliva flying. Izuku jumped, landing on top of a stack of crates. He looked down. The villain was tearing at the foundation of the stack, shaking the whole structure. Think. He couldn't use 100%. He would kill the man. But 5% was barely keeping him alive against the trigger-boosted strength. Use your gear, Kuro's ordered. Flashbangs. Now, Izuku fumbled for his belt. He pulled a pin on a spherical grenade and dropped it. Bang! A blinding white light filled the warehouse, accompanied by a deafening screech. The villain howled, clutching his eyes. Izuku dropped from the ceiling. He landed behind the blinded villain, grabbed his arm, and used the man's own momentum to flip him over his hip. The villain slammed into the concrete, the breath leaving him. Izuku pinned him, wrapping the capture tape around the massive torso. Secure, Izuku panted. Crack! A gunshot rang out. Izuku flinched. A bullet had struck the floor inches from his face. Move, idiot! Nagant screamed in his ear. Izuku rolled to the right just as a blast of compressed air pulverized the spot where he had been kneeling. He looked up. Standing on a catwalk above was a massive figure. Goro Haka. The leader. His arms were enormous, encased in industrial machinery that seemed fused to his flesh. Pistons hissed and steamed as he flexed. You took out my pawns, Haka rumbled, his voice deep and gravelly. Good. More profit for me. He jumped down. He didn't land, he crashed. The floor cracked under his weight. But you look soft, Haka said, walking toward Izuku. You look like a Yui brat playing dress-up. Izuku scrambled to his feet. His side was throbbing. His breath was coming in short gasps. Surrender, Haka! Izuku shouted, trying to project authority he didn't feel. You're surrounded, am I? Haka grinned. He pointed a piston arm at the darker corners of the room. Out of the shadows, more men emerged. 10 of them. All holding red vials. They injected them in unison. The sound of flesh tearing and bones shifting filled the room. 10 men transformed into hulking monstrosities of muscle, blades, and fire. Nagant? Izuku's voice trembled. I see them, she said. I can take 3. You have to handle the rest. There are 10. Plus the big guy. Then stop holding back, she said. Welcome to the job. Part 4, The Meat Grinder. The next 5 minutes were a blur of violence. Izuku moved like a pinball. He bounced from wall to floor to ceiling, dodging claws, fireballs, and spikes. He wasn't attacking. He was purely evading. Manchester Smash. He kicked a villain into a wall, knocking him out. St. Louis Smash. He swept another off his feet. But for every one he dropped, 2 more took their place. They were relentless. The trigger turned off their pain receptors. Izuku broke a man's nose, and the man just laughed and tried to bite him. Sniper! Haka yelled. Suppress the roof. 2 villains with range quirks, one shooting spikes, the other fire, began blasting the skylights, forcing Nagant to take cover. I'm pinned! Nagant hissed. You're on your own for 30 seconds. Izuku was alone in the pit. Haka charged. He was faster than a man that size had any right to be. He swung a piston arm. Izuku dodged, but the shockwave threw him off balance. Haka followed up with a backhand. It connected. The titanium faceplate of Izuku's mask shattered. The impact sent him flying across the warehouse. He crashed through a wooden office partition and slammed into a metal filing cabinet. Everything went white. Then red. Izuku lay in the debris, gasping. His mask was gone, hanging by a wire. His lip was split. Blood poured down his chin. His vision swam. Get up, he told himself. Get up. He tried to move his right arm. It wouldn't respond. It wasn't broken, but the nerve damage from the impact had numbed it. Haka walked through the debris of the office, tearing the wall down with one hand. Is that it? Haka sneered. The commission sent a child to do a man's job. He reached down and grabbed Izuku by the throat. Haka lifted him effortlessly. Izuku's feet dangled 2 feet off the ground. The villain's grip was like a vice. He began to squeeze. Izuku clawed at the massive hand. He couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in his eyes. You have a powerful quirk, Haka mused, bringing Izuku's face close to his own. Speed. Strength. But you lack the will to use it. You've been pulling your punches all night. I can feel it. Haka's other arm, the piston arm, retracted with a hydraulic hiss. Steam vented from his elbow. He aimed the fist at Izuku's face. Let's see what color your brain is. Midoriya! Negan's voice screamed in his ear. Use lethal force. Kill him or he kills you. I can't. Izuku choked out. He's going to crush your skull. Do it. The piston arm began to extend. Time seemed to stop. Izuku looked into Haka's eyes. He saw no mercy. He saw no humanity. Only the drug-fueled madness of a killer. He thought of his mother. He thought of All Might, dying slowly in a hospital bed. He thought of the empty desk at UA. If I die here, it was all for nothing. If I die here they win. Something inside Izuku snapped. Not a bone, but a barrier. A moral line he had drawn in the sand at the beach park during his training. He stopped trying to pull Haka's hand away. Instead, he grabbed Haka's thumb. He channeled one for all. 10%. 20%. The red veins on his skin glowed so bright they burned through the fabric of the suit. Let go, Izuku whispered. He twisted. Part 5. The sound of ruin. The sound was wet. It was the sound of a green branch being snapped, amplified 100 times. Haka's thumb didn't just break. It was torn from the socket. But Izuku didn't stop there. As Haka roared and dropped him, Izuku didn't retreat. He stepped in. The fear was gone. Replaced by a cold, survivalist clarity. Izuku grabbed the mechanical piston arm that was aiming for his head. He gripped the hydraulic tubing. One for all 30%. He ripped the tubing out. Hot oil and steam sprayed over his face, mixing with his blood. Haka screamed, a primal, terrified sound. My arm! You little! Haka swung his organic arm. Izuku ducked. He was inside the guard now. Smash, Izuku whispered. He drove his fist into Haka's elbow joint. Crunch. The bone shattered. The arm bent backward at a grotesque angle. Haka fell to his knees, wailing. The fight had left him. The pain cut through the trigger high. Stop! Stop! Haka pleaded, cradling his ruined arm. Izuku stood over him. His chest heaved. The green lightning arced violently around him, scorching the floor. His eyes were shadowed, glowing with raw power. He raised his fist again. Midoriya! Stand down! Negan's voice cut through the haze. Izuku froze. His fist was hovering inches from Haka's face. The villain was sobbing, curled into a ball. Izuku blinked. The lightning faded. He looked at his hand. It was covered in oil and blood. He looked at the man on the floor. He hadn't just defeated him, he had maimed him. The other villains, seeing their leader broken so effortlessly, dropped their weapons. They raised their hands, the trigger effects wearing off, leaving them shivering and weak. The warehouse doors blew open. Teams of men in black hazmat suits swarmed in. They didn't shout police or freeze. They moved silently, zip-tying the villains, bagging the evidence. 2 agents grabbed the sobbing Haka. They didn't read him his rights. They injected him with a sedative and threw a black hood over his head, dragging him out like a sack of trash. Nagant rappelled down from the skylight. She landed next to Izuku. She looked at Haka being dragged away, then at the blood on Izuku's armor. She didn't smile. She didn't offer comfort. Target neutralized, she said into her calms. Sight secure. She reached out and wiped a smear of oil from Izuku's cheek with her thumb. It was a rough, almost maternal gesture, but her eyes were cold. You hesitated, she said quietly. But you finished it. I broke him, Izuku whispered, staring at his trembling hands. I could have. I should have found another way. There wasn't another way, Nagant said firmly. He was going to kill you. You chose to live. That's the job. She turned and walked toward the exit. Get in the van, Atlas. We have debriefing. Part 6, the alleyway. Izuku walked out of the warehouse. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and humid. The adrenaline was crashing. His body felt like lead. The pain in his ribs returned with a vengeance, making every breath a knife in his chest. He walked past the van. Hey! Where are you going? Kuro's shouted from the driver's seat. Izuku waved him off. He walked around the corner into a dark, narrow alleyway filled with overflowing dumpsters. He ripped the broken mask off his face and threw it on the wet ground. He leaned against the brick wall, sliding down until he was crouching. His stomach lurched. He vomited. Acid and bile splashed onto the pavement. He gagged, spitting out the taste of copper in terror. He heaved until there was nothing left, his body shaking violently. He wiped his mouth with the back of his armored hand. The metal scraped his skin. He closed his eyes and saw Haka's arms snapping. He heard the scream. I heard him. I'm supposed to save them. I'm supposed to be like All Might. But All Might saved people with a smile. All Might made it look easy. All Might never looked at a villain with the intent to maim. I'm not All Might, Izuku whispered to the darkness. He looked at his reflection in a puddle. The neon sign from the street reflected in the water, turning the puddle red. He looked like a monster. Kid, he looked up. Nagant was standing at the mouth of the alley. She was leaning against the wall, lighting a cigarette. The flame illuminated her tired face. You done? She asked. Izuku nodded weakly. I think so. Good, she said, exhaling a plume of smoke. The first time is always the hardest. You puke, you cry, you think you're a monster. Then you wake up tomorrow and realize the world is still spinning because you did what you had to do. She walked over and offered him a hand. Get up. The commission doesn't pay for therapy. Izuku looked at her hand. It was calloused, scarred, a hand that had pulled the trigger 1,000 times. He reached out and took it. She pulled him up. He swayed, and she steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. Does it get easier? Izuku asked, his voice cracking. Nagant looked him in the eye. She didn't lie. No, she said. You just get better at hiding it. She turned and walked back toward the van. Izuku stood in the alley for a moment longer. He looked at the broken pieces of his mask on the ground. He stepped on them, crushing the metal under his heavy boot. He pulled his hood up, hiding his face in the shadow. Izuku Midoriya walked out of the alley. The boy who dreamed of saving everyone was left behind in the dark, next to the puddle of bile. The soldier named Atlas climbed into the van. The doors slid shut with a final, sealing thud. The van drove away, disappearing into the neon-lit labyrinth of Tokyo, leaving no trace that a hero had ever been there. The dressing room was brighter than the sun. Or at least, it felt that way to eyes that had spent the last 48 hours adjusting to the gloom of warehouses and underground bunkers. Izuku Midoriya sat in a chair that cost more than his mother's car. It was upholstered in white velvet, soft and swallowing. He sat on the edge of it, his back rigid, terrified of staining the pristine fabric. He wasn't wearing the armored Atlas suit. That was for the night. That was for the wet work. Instead, he was wearing the daylight ensemble. It was a costume designed by a committee of marketing executives who had never thrown a punch in their lives. It was a bodysuit of a lighter, friendlier green, teal, really, with white accents that emphasized his shoulders and chest. It didn't have armor plates. It had foam padding to make him look broader, more heroic. The cape was short, yellow, and utterly useless. Hold still, honey, a makeup artist murmured, dabbing a cold sponge under Izuku's left eye. You have circles under your circles. Have you slept at all? Izuku didn't answer. He couldn't. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth ached. If he relaxed his jaw, he might scream. His ribs, cracked during the fight with Goro Haka, were wrapped tightly in compression bandages beneath the suit. Every breath was a negotiation with pain. The commission's doctors had given him a high-grade painkiller injection an hour ago. It dulled the sharp edges of the agony, turning it into a distant, throbbing hum, but it also made his head feel like it was stuffed with cotton. There, the artist said, stepping back to admire her work. Covered up that nasty bruise on your cheek, too. You look like a brand new penny. Izuku looked in the mirror. The face staring back was smooth, pale, and terrifyingly perfect. The freckles were gone, buried under layers of foundation. The terror in his eyes was framed by carefully curled lashes. 5 minutes to air! A production assistant shouted, sticking his head through the door. Ms. Koda is ready for you. Ms. Sato, his PR handler, clapped her hands. She was wearing a headset and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. All right, Mighty Deku, she said, using the brand name with sickening cheerfulness. Let's review the key talking points. What is your mission? Izuku recited the line automatically. To inspire hope and ensure the safety of every citizen. And what do you think of the recent rise in villain activity? It is a temporary storm, Izuku said, his voice flat. And I am the umbrella. With a smile. Sato corrected, tapping her own cheek. The metaphor doesn't work if you say it like a funeral director. I am the umbrella. Bright. Happy. Izuku forced the corners of his mouth up. The skin felt tight. Better, Sato lied. She grabbed his shoulders and steered him toward the door. Remember, this is the morning rise. It's a fluff show. Housewives and students are watching. No talk of sanitizing. No talk of suppression. You save cats. You help old ladies. You are the golden boy. I understand, Izuku whispered. And Deku? Sato leaned in close, her grip on his shoulder tightening painfully, pressing right onto a bruise. Yes? Don't stutter. All Might didn't stutter. She pushed him through the curtain. Part 2, The Glass Cage. The studio was a sensory assault. Applause exploded the moment he stepped onto the stage. It wasn't a natural sound. It was the frantic, directed applause of an audience responding to a flashing clap now sign. The set was designed to look like a cozy living room, bathed in warm ambers and soft pinks. Sitting on a beige sofa was the host, Koda Yuko, a woman with a quirk that made her hair sparkle like glitter. She was a staple of morning television, known for her bubbly personality and softball questions. And here he is, Koda announced, gesturing grandly. The mystery prodigy. The boy who has taken the nation by storm. The mighty Deku. Izuku walked to the guest chair. He tried to walk normally, but his boots, lighter, stylized versions of his combat gear, felt foreign. He sat down, wincing internally as his ribs protested the movement. Welcome, Deku! Koda beamed, leaning forward. My goodness, you're even cuter in person. Look at him, audience. Isn't he adorable? The audience cooed and cheered. Someone shouted, We love you, Deku! Izuku gripped the armrests. His gloves were white leather. He stared at them, remembering the oil and blood that had coated his hands just 2 nights ago. I broke a man's arm, he thought. I tore the tubes out of his flesh. And you're calling me adorable. Thank you, Koda-san, Izuku said, his voice modulated by the hidden vocalizer in his collar to sound deeper, more resonant. It is an honor to be here. So polite. Koda laughed. Now, the whole country is dying to know. Who are you? You appeared out of nowhere right after the USJ incident. Some are calling you All Might's secret son. Is there any truth to that? The script. Stick to the script. All Might is a mentor and a father figure to all heroes, Izuku said, reciting the lines Sato had drilled into him. I am simply the first of a new generation trained to uphold his legacy. My past isn't important. What matters is the future I can build for you. So mysterious. Koda squealed. I love it. Now, we have some footage provided by the Hero Commission. Let's take a look. The giant screen behind them lit up. Izuku tensed. Was it the warehouse? Was it the brutality? No. It was a simulation. A staged rescue. The video showed Izuku, in his clean suit, lifting a steel beam off a trap dummy in a disaster zone. He carried the dummy to safety, looked at the camera, and gave a thumbs up. The editing was aggressive. Slow motion. heroic music swelling in the background. It looked like a movie trailer. The audience oot and out. So strong, Koda commented. And you're only, well, we aren't supposed to ask your age, are we? But you look so young. Age is just a number, Izuku said. Justice is timeless. He hated himself. He hated every syllable that left his mouth. It felt like lying to his mother. Now, Koda said, her face turning slightly more serious, though the sparkle in her hair didn't dim. There have been rumors. Some internet forums are saying that your methods are intense, that you're part of a new government initiative to crack down on villains harder than before. Is the mighty Deku a tough guy? Izuku froze. This wasn't in the script. Sato had promised no hard questions. He looked toward the wings of the stage. He saw Sato making a cut-it motion with her hand, glaring at the producer, but the camera was on him. The red light of the lens looked like the red eye of a villain. Izuku stammered. The modulator glitched for a second, revealing his high-pitched, terrified voice before correcting itself. I do what is necessary. Necessary? Koda pressed, sensing a scoop. What does that mean? Do you think the old ways of heroics were too soft? The studio went silent. The audience leaned in. Izuku thought of the warehouse. He thought of the villains high on trigger, monsters that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be saved with a speech about friendship. He thought of Negan's cold eyes. Saving people is the easy part. Living with it is the hard part. The world is changing, Izuku said. He wasn't reciting the script anymore. The words tumbled out, heavy and dark. Villains aren't playing by the rules. They don't care about your safety. They don't care about the law. If a hero has to be a wall to keep the monsters out, then the wall has to be made of stone. Not pillows. Koda blinked. The bubbly atmosphere of the show evaporated for a split second, replaced by something colder. The audience looked unsettled. This wasn't the cat savior answer. Sato was frantically waving her arms in the wings. Izuku realized his mistake. He swallowed hard. But, he added quickly, forcing the mascot smile back onto his face. It felt like a rictus of pain. But mostly, I just want everyone to smile. Because a smile is the symbol of peace. Plus ultra! He threw his fist in the air. The tension broke. The audience cheered, relieved that the golden boy was back. Koda laughed, though it sounded a bit forced. Plus ultra indeed. What a passion! We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. The music swelled. The on-air sign turned off. Izuku slumped in his chair. Sato stormed onto the stage. She didn't look happy. Water, she snapped at an assistant, who scurried to obey. She grabbed Izuku's chin and tilted his face up. What was that? The wall has to be stone. You sounded like a fascist, Deku. You scared the soccer moms. She asked. You pivot. Sato hissed. You say, I love puppies and justice. You don't talk about the monsters. They don't want to know the monsters are real. That's why we built you. She shoved a bottle of water into his hand. Drink. We have a walking tour in the Ginza district in 20 minutes. Shake it off. Izuku drank the water. His hands were shaking so bad some of it spilled onto his white gloves, turning the leather dark. It looked like a stain that wouldn't wash out. Part 3. The Parade of Lies. The Ginza district was the heart of Tokyo's luxury. High-end boutiques, glass skyscrapers, and wide, tree-lined boulevards. It was a place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. The HPSC had closed off 2 blocks for the impromptu patrol. Izuku walked down the center of the street. He was flanked by 4 sidekicks, HPSC agents in generic hero costumes, who acted as a buffer between him and the crowd. And there was a crowd. Word had leaked, intentionally, that the mighty Deku would be patrolling. Hundreds of people lined the sidewalks behind velvet ropes. They held signs. We love DKU! Our new symbol! Marry me DKU! Izuku waved. Left. Right. Left. Right. It was mechanical. His HUD, projected onto the contact lenses he was forced to wear, was scanning the crowd constantly. Threat assessment, low. Face match, negative. Suspicious package, none. He wasn't looking at the people as fans. He was looking at them as potential threats or potential victims. Every backpack looked like a bomb. Every hand in a pocket looked like a weapon. Smile, asset, Kurosa's voice said in his earpiece. You look like you're at a funeral. Izuku widened his smile. His cheeks burned. Look! It's him! A child screamed. Izuku looked down. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, had ducked under the velvet rope. He was wearing an All Might hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. He ran toward Izuku, clutching a notebook. The security agents tensed. One moved to intercept. No, Izuku said, stopping the agent with a hand. Let him come. The boy stopped a few feet away, staring up at Izuku with eyes the size of dinner plates. Are you really him? The boy whispered. Are you All Might's student? Izuku knelt down. The movement made his ribs scream, a flash of white-hot agony shooting up his spine. He bit the inside of his cheek to keep from grimacing. I am, Izuku said softly. What's your name? Koda, the boy said. Not that Koda, just a coincidence, Izuku told himself. Well, Koda-kun, Izuku said, taking the notebook the boy offered. Do you want to be a hero too? Yeah. The boy nodded vigorously. I want to be strong. So I can beat up the bad guys. Izuku froze. The pen hovered over the paper. Beat up the bad guys. He looked at the boy's innocent face. He saw the excitement, the glorification of violence. The boy didn't know about the blood. He didn't know about the sound a bone makes when it snaps. He didn't know about the nightmares. Being a hero. Izuku started, his voice trembling slightly. It isn't about beating people up, Koda-kun. It isn't? No, Izuku said, signing his name, Deku, in jagged, rush strokes. It's about saving them. Even the bad guys. You have to save them from themselves. He handed the notebook back. Promise me, Izuku whispered, leaning in so the cameras wouldn't hear. Promise me you won't rush to grow up. Stay a kid as long as you can. The boy looked confused, but he took the notebook. Okay, Mr. Deku. Izuku stood up. The world spun for a second. Moving on, Kuro's ordered in his ear. Good interaction. Polled well with the demographic. Keep moving. Izuku turned away from the boy. He felt sick. He felt like a fraud. He continued down the street, waving at the blur of faces. Click. Flash. Cheer. It was a carnival, and he was the dancing bear. Part 4, The Collision. Okay, cut the feed for a moment, Sato ordered. We need to reset the camera crew for the intersection shot. Deku, take 5. Stay on the corner. Do not engage unless approached. The cameras lowered. The crowd was held back at the intersection. Izuku stood by a lamppost, adjusting his cape. He exhaled, letting the smile drop. His face felt heavy, sagging under the weight of the mask. He looked across the street. There was a crepe stand. It smelled like vanilla and strawberries. It smelled like normal life. He stared at it, a pang of longing hitting him so hard it almost doubled him over. He remembered buying crepes with his mom. He remembered talking about flavors with Uraraka. No way, the voice was familiar. Not the screaming of a fan, but a voice from a memory. Izuku stiffened. He slowly turned his head. Standing near the crepe stand, holding bags from a generic souvenir shop, were 2 teenagers. One was a girl with bobbed brown hair and round, rosy cheeks. She was holding a strawberry crepe, frozen mid-bite. The other was a tall, bespectacled boy with blue hair, wearing a stiff casual outfit that looked like it had been ironed by a machine. Ochako Uraraka. Tenya Ida? Izuku's heart hammered against his bruised ribs. Thump thump thump. They weren't supposed to be here. The briefing said Class 1A was on a field trip to the Science Museum in Ueno. Why were they in Ginza? Deku-kun? Uraraka breathed. She dropped the crepe. It splattered on the sidewalk, cream and strawberries ruining the pavement. She took a step forward. Warning, the HUD flashed. Unidentified approach. Stand down, Izuku muttered to his suit's AI. Ida adjusted his glasses, his eyes widening. Midoriya-kun? Is that truly you? They ran across the street. The light was red, but they didn't care. The HPSC agents moved to block them. Back up. No autographs at this time. No! Izuku shouted. It was the first time he had raised his voice all day. Let them through. They're my classmates. The agents hesitated, looking at Kuroz, who was monitoring from a van nearby. After a pause, Kuroz spoke in the agent's ears. Let them pass. But keep it brief. 90 seconds. The agents parted. Uraraka slammed into him. It was a hug full of relief and force. Ow! Izuku gasped involuntarily as she squeezed his broken ribs. Uraraka pulled back instantly, horror on her face. Oh my gosh! I'm sorry! You disappeared. Your desk was empty. We thought you were dead. Tears were welling up in her eyes. Big, fat, honest tears. Ida was chopping the air, though his movements were shaky. Midoriya! This is unconscionable behavior. Leaving without a word. Aizawa-sensei said you transferred, but we feared the worst. Why are you dressed like this? Why are you on television? Izuku looked at them. They looked so clean. Uraraka was wearing a pink sweater. Ida was in a polo shirt. They looked soft. Unbroken. They looked like children, and Izuku realized, with a sinking horror, that he didn't look like them anymore.